What's going on, everyone? In today's video, this is just going to be a raw, uncut, full-on Keepa tutorial, and we're going to be looking at books through BookMine, but specifically, I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know about Keepa, literally A to Z, and this is really going to be helpful because at the end of the day, if you want to make money selling books, you have to understand what a book's worth is or what a book's value is, and really the only way that you can do that accurately and consistently over time is if you get really good at reading Keepa graphs. So if you're somebody who's not good at reading Keepa graphs, well, this video is exactly for you. Again, it's not going to be edited because we're just going to go through A to Z, everything that you need to know about Keepa. And I imagine a lot of people are just going to watch this video, for the whole hour probably it's going to be. So with that said, let's get started. So let's say you're a BookMine member, you're looking at some books here on BookMine, you're looking at Keepa graphs, you have no idea what the heck you're looking at. You're like, is this a profitable book? Is this a profitable book? Well, I don't know. Well, what we're going to do is actually just look at the Keepa graph of each of these individual books, and I'm going to teach you about how we know whether or not Amazon's on the listing, whether or not the use price is low or high relative to the past, whether or not the book is selling, all that good stuff. So the first thing that you need to know is that if you are, a user of BookMine, you will have this Keepa snapshot that's shown to you, regardless of whether or not you have a Keepa subscription. However, Victor and I always recommend that you actually go in to Keepa and actually do a little bit more research, expand the historical selling data to go a little bit further, and that requires you to actually have a Keepa subscription. So what that simply means is you would have to go to Keepa.com, and when you're at Keepa.com, you just go and pay for a subscription. So I can go to subscriptions here, and you can choose just a basic subscription. So you can either pay on a monthly basis or a yearly basis. I think it's like $20 a month, but you need a subscription if you want to see something called sales rank. Sales rank is basically these green lines that you see here, and I'll again talk to you a little bit later on in this video exactly what sales rank is and why it's so important, but you're going to want to keep a subscription if you want to be able to see that. Now, just some things that I would highly recommend that you do as well as download the Keepa Chrome extension, and that's really easy. You just type in Keepa, you go Chrome extension. So I just type this right into Google. I'm going to go ahead and click Keepa Chrome extension, and then you're going to add this to Chrome. And the reason why that's really important is because then when you load an Amazon listing, like, for this book, for example, the Keepa graph is actually going to populate on the listing itself, which is just a really nice feature that makes, doing this much easier because you could look at all the offers on the actual listing, and then you can also look at, the Keepa graph down below. Now, some other really important things that you're going to want to do in your settings is just go to the Keepa homepage. And when you're at the Keepa homepage, click on the settings button here. And when you're at that settings button, come over here and click on the website cog. And some things that I recommend doing is probably changing how long you want to track books for. I generally like to track books for up to 10 years, but I think the default is maybe 3 months or 6 months. I'm not sure. I specifically like 10 years because if I find a profitable book and I think I can sell it again and again in the future, then I want to make sure I'm tracking it for a long time, or at least as long as they'll let me track it for. Now, the other thing that I like to do is make sure that the price overlays are shown when I'm hovering an Amazon product. So you want to make sure that says yes. And then also want to make sure that the stock quantity on offer listing pages also say yes. And again, we'll get into what exactly those mean a little bit later on. Okay. Now, a couple things that you're also going to want to know if we come back to just, I believe it's the notifications setting. Make sure you also have an email set up here if you want to receive Keepa alerts. And again, we'll go into tracking products later on. But essentially, if you find a book that maybe you're waiting for it to get a little bit cheaper and you want to track it, well, you'd want to get notified when that book gets to that price. And so obviously you're going to need a way to get notified. In this case, if you have an email address, you can get an email, sent to this email address that you put there. So hopefully that makes sense. We're going to now dive right into this very, very, hopefully not too long, but probably pretty long Keepa tutorial, everything that you need to know. So you come up here on BookMine, you find this book, its current price is $12.72. We want to know, is that a good deal? Well, we have to actually understand, what is this book's value? How has it performed over time? Is it currently priced low? Is it currently priced high? What does it normally sell for? So you can obviously just click on this Keepa link here. And once you click on that Keepa link, we're now here at the Keepa page, or the Keepa graph. And so I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller here. And I'm just going to start off incredibly simple with something called sales rank. Okay. So I'm also going to start here at a 1-year snapshot. So it's actually really cool. You can change the default view for how much historical data you want to look at. And I think I have the default set to a year. Maybe the default is normally 3 months, but again, in your settings, you can go ahead and you can change that. Let me just show you that. Again, I think you just go to the settings tab, go to the website cog. Yeah, and under the range, you can say that, hey, I want it to be a year right there, and that's good. Okay, we're looking at 1 year's worth of data, and we're looking at a green line, which is called sales rank. Now, what you need to know about sales rank is that it is the way that Amazon tells us how popular a product is. Now, there's many different categories in Amazon, but specifically, we're looking at the book category, and the sales rank number is how popular that book is in the book category. So, for example, what we could do right now is actually just open up the Amazon listing, and if you were to scroll down to the product details on this Amazon listing, you can actually see that a sales rank will be reported, and in this case, it's a ranking of 1,223,767. Think of that as the 1,223,000 most popular book. The closer that number is to 1, the better, or the more popular it is. In other words, if we came to this listing and this had a bestsellers rank of 1, what that means is it is the most popular book on Amazon. It's more popular than any other book. It's selling more often than any other book. And so, yeah, if you found a book that had a sales rank of 2, that means that there's only one other book that's more popular than it, but it's still incredibly popular. Now, what you need to know about the sales rank is that whenever a book starts selling, it's going to become more popular, and therefore its sales rank number is going to go down. And that's what you can actually see here on a Keepa graph. If I just use my cursor and let's say hover over the sales rank, you'll notice that as I move from left to right over the graph, the sales rank number is actually going up. It's becoming 2.9 million, 2.92, 2.93. And the reason for that is if the book doesn't sell, then it's becoming less popular relative to other books that are selling. And so what you're going to see is the sales rank go up and up and up and up and up and up until finally you see a huge drop in the sales rank number. We go from 2.9 million all the way down here to about 338,000. That one huge drop in sales rank number is what we would then say is a sale. The book actually sold. Why? Because it improved drastically in sales rank, right? It's now a much more popular book. Okay, now again, this is just a beginner Keepa tutorial. All I want you to think of right now is anytime you see the sales rank drop significantly like that, almost as if you're climbing on top of a mountain and then you drop off the mountain, like a huge drop off a cliff, think of that as a sale. When you get a little bit more advanced, maybe we'll get there in this video. I don't know, maybe not. This video might be long. When you get a little bit more advanced, you'll learn that a sales rank drop doesn't necessarily just mean a single sell, but what you should think of it right now is think of it as a sell. The book sold, it became much more popular. Now, why is this so important? Why is this so fundamental? Because if you want to be a bookseller, you have to be able to gauge or understand how often a book sells within a given time frame. For example, we're looking at a 1-year snapshot for this particular book. And I can already tell within a split second that this book sells sometimes, but not a lot. And again, the reason why I know that is because I can look at how many times the sales rank has dropped, and in my brain, I can count them. And so I'm going to use a little tool here to hopefully try to illustrate this point a little bit, where we have a sales rank drop right there. That's 1. We have a sales rank drop right there. That's 2. We have a 3rd one, a 4th one, a 5th one, a 6th drop, a 7th drop, an 8th drop, and a 9th drop. So to me, this book has sold 9 times in the last year. Now, again, as you get a little bit more nuance in it and you get better at sales rank, maybe it actually sold a little bit more, but just think of it right now as, okay, the sales rank improved dramatically 9 times throughout the year. That means the book would have sold about 9 times. Now, again, the reason why that's important is because you have to have expectations for when you buy a book and sell a book. Like, if I were to send this book to an Amazon warehouse, would I expect it to sell the same day it got there? No. Why? Because this book only sells 9 times a year. That's like less than once a month. So if I send this to an Amazon warehouse, I'd say, oh, well, this book should probably sell maybe this month, maybe next month, maybe the month after that, maybe once every 1 or 2 months is kind of what we should see here. Now, let's go ahead and look for maybe a book that has a better sales rank. And what I mean by that is we see a better frequency of sales rank drops. We see more sales rank drops. Now, I hope you can see when we look at this Keepa graph versus this Keepa graph, there's a massive difference in the number of sales rank drops. And again, we're going to make this really simple and remove everything except for the sales rank. You'll see in this 1-year Keepa snapshot for this particular book, while I could actually count the sales, I don't really necessarily need to do that to know that this book sells significantly more than this one does here. Because I can just see there's a lot more of this up and down movement where the sales rank goes up and then it goes down, remember every time it drops off a cliff, that's like a sell. And so there's a bunch of drops like this. It's almost like a heartbeat, just up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. So I know, okay, this is a book that sells much, much more frequently than this book. But we can go even further. We can find books that sell even more than that. I can simply just go up here on BookMine and just change the selling meter like 7 to 10, and we'll see some books that just sell, substantially more. So let's see if we can find something like this, for example. So we'll open this within Keepa, and you'll actually notice, again, let's get rid of everything else except for sales rank, that while we could probably count these sales rank drops pretty easily, you actually see that all of a sudden the sales rank gets incredibly low to the point in which it's like you don't even see this point where the sales rank goes really, really high and then it drops. It's kind of just like it's going up and dropping, going up and dropping. It's like a very, very quick and short up and down movement. And that's because this particular book has some seasonality to it, meaning that this is a book that tends to perform very, very well in August and September, and hopefully we'll be able to find some more examples of that if we just scroll through some of these Keepa graphs. Like this is an awesome example of what we call seasonality. Seasonality simply just means, hey, this is when a book tends to sell much more frequently than than any other time throughout the year. And in this case, if you're going to be using BookMine, or if you're just a bookseller in general, you would expect that college textbooks tend to sell at times when students go back to college, which tends to be right around August and tends to be right around January. And for specific books, also in May, because there's also schools that are not just on a semester system, but are also on a quarter system. And so what we can see here is that the sales rank almost has like a U shape right here. It's like you can see how the sales rank gets really low, almost like a U here. It gets really low there, it gets really low here, and it gets really low there. So remember, when I say low sales rank, I mean the actual number is low. Remember, the lower the number, the more popular it is, right? And so we can say that this book has some seasonality. Now, it's really important for you to understand that as well, because later on when we look at the use price, generally what you tend to expect when the sales rank improves gets really low. In other words, when the demand of a book increases and people are buying it, you expect the use price to go up. And so there's sort of a correlation between the two. When there's a way more people coming to the listing and buying the book, then you tend to see the use price spike up. And again, we'll look at that a little bit later on here. But what you should know is that some books show seasonality and some books don't. In this case, this is a college textbook that does clearly have seasonality. And I would bet that if I were to expand not just a year, but its entire selling data, you can actually see that, hey, this is a book that has multiple periods of, basically a repeated pattern. January, August, I should say January, May, August, January, May, August, January, May, August, and so on and so forth. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense there. And by the way, you might notice that when I looked at the last 4,900 days, I kind of zoomed in a little bit. So the way that you would actually zoom in on a Keepa graph, and this is something that I would highly recommend that you get very comfortable with, is all you need to do is take your left finger pointer and click down on the left button of the mouse, and then you just drag, and then you literally just drop and let go. And that allows you to zoom into a specific period of time, which is incredibly helpful if you really want to look at some data. Like, for example, if you want to really look at the May-June textbook, season for this particular book, you can kind of see, a little bit more in depth. And so I'd highly recommend that. Okay. So when you're on BookMine, you're going to see all these Keepa graphs. All you need to know is that the more of these sales rank drops you see, the more often the book is selling. And what that should tell you is that I have more opportunities to sell the book, because if there's more sales rank drops, that means the book is more popular. That means people are willing to buy this book. Also remember that some books are going to have seasonality to them, and so you would expect to sell, hey, this particular book is more likely to sell during this specific time. Like, for example, on BookMine, we also have different book types, and so we have high school books and we have winter books, and those pop up, throughout the year. But for example, a book called The Night Before Christmas, you'd expect that sales rank to get incredibly low in November and December, right before Christmas. So you're going to start using your common sense. Like, October's right around the corner, so obviously, Halloween is something where if you have a book about Halloween or about pumpkins, you'd expect the sales rank of that book to get really low. And also you would expect the sales rank to get high and become, that book to become very unpopular when it's not the season. Like, most people are not buying Halloween books in April or March, right? They're buying them during specific season. So hopefully that makes sense there with sales rank. Now, the next thing that we're going to look at here is we're going to look at the used price. And so basically, I'm going to go ahead and exit out of all of these tabs I have here, and we're going to go back to the top here, and let's go ahead and just look at this first book that we looked at in the beginning. So we're looking at the used price now. Now I'm going to get rid of sales rank just because I think maybe looking at all of this individually and then layering it on top makes it a little bit easier for people to digest. So what we're looking at here is this little button here, which is called the used price. By the way, before, and I should have mentioned this, we were looking at sales rank. It's just this button up here. When I click it, show sales rank. When I uncheck it, it doesn't show sales rank. Now we're going to look at the used price. What you need to understand about this black line or this used price is that it represents the lowest used price of this book, which was recorded on the Amazon listing at that specific point in time for that particular book. Okay, and so what that means is it gives you an amazing understanding within a second or two of what the book has been priced at the lowest price, at the lowest offer throughout any given period of time, through the last 3 months, the last year, the entire history. And the reason why that's so crucial is because if you see a book that's essentially sitting at a lowest use price of a couple of bucks throughout its entire history, what that tells you is that, okay, the book probably doesn't hold very much value because you could buy it whenever you want for $2 or $3. On the other hand, you might find a book like this, which clearly has some value. I mean, if you look at the used price and you just kind of go left to right on the Keepa graph, you can say, hey, in October of last year is at $81, and in December of last year is $53, and in February is $39. In this particular book, it looks like its lowest use price has kind of been deteriorating over time. But again, something that you could do is you could look at the book's entire historical selling data, and you could literally any day that, where this book was actually listed on Amazon, you could go back and figure out, well, what was it listed at its lowest price? And so a couple of important things that you should notice here is that used price doesn't stay steady. It's not like it's always the same. For example, you don't expect your gasoline to be, the gas that we go by at the gas station to be the same price all the time. It fluctuates, right? All markets fluctuate in terms of their price, and it's no different than used books. The lowest used price of books generally is going to fluctuate. For this particular book, it has at times been very low, like back in 2015, for a short period of time, it was as low as $7. And then in 2020, it was as high as $65. For a part of 2023, it was up to $133. So what this just does is gives us an idea of what the book has been listed at. And what we're then going to do is kind of bring the sales rank and the used price together to help us figure out, well, what is the book actually worth though? Because at the end of the day, a book can be listed on Amazon in used condition for whatever price the seller is willing to charge. Now, of course, generally most books are going to be listed at a price that they're selling at, but for example, this is a book that at one time was listed at $133, and it could be just due to the fact that there just weren't very many sellers on the listing. And again, you can charge as a seller, you can charge you could ask whatever price you want, but what you ask versus what someone is actually willing to pay are two completely separate things. In other words, if there was no other person on the listing except for me, I could literally charge $10 million for this book if I wanted. And the Keepa graph would show $10 million as the lowest used price. But again, that's why we need to then pair sales rank with the lowest used price together to get a good gauge of what the book is actually worth or what the book is selling for. So here's where I'm going to start making this a little more complicated. I'm going to start layering on sales rank onto this graph with the lowest used price. And really the simplest thing that we're going to do is just look at this intersection point. We're going to look at what the lowest used price was when the sales rank dropped, and what that tells us is what the book must have sold for at the minimum. Because remember, what this black line represents is the lowest used price on Amazon at this period of time. For example, you can see that the used price is $872. If I come down here, you can see it says $870, $875 or $872 as well. If I go to the Amazon listing, here's what I mean. You actually come here and it looks like, here it is. The lowest used price is $872. It's important to note that this number here on Keepa is not including shipping. It's just the lowest base price, not necessarily including shipping. And so this case is $872. There's $3.98 shipping. The important thing to know on BookMine though is we're always going to give you the all-in price with shipping included. So this particular book here is priced at $8.72, and that's actually the lowest price it's been over time. And again, how I know that is if I use my cursor and go left to right, I can see that this book has never been that low except for today. And so in other words, this book is actually, currently priced at the lowest it's been in this year. Now, what we're going to do though is figure out, well, what is the book actually selling for? And so what we see is, hey, on this day, it looks like this was maybe mid-January. The lowest price on Amazon was $43. And guess what, guys and gals? The sales rank improved. It went from 2.9 million and went all the way down here to 568,000. And so what that tells us, hey, is that the book actually sold, and the book must have sold for at least $42. Why? Because that's the lowest used price available. Now, of course, people ask me this all the time. How do we know if the book was sold in new condition or used condition? Or how do we know if it was a very good copy or an acceptable copy? How do we know it was actually $42 and not more than that? The answer is you don't. But what you do know is a very important piece of information. And that is that the book sold for at least $42. That's a book that must have value, right? If someone's willing to fork over $42 for a book, that must mean that they see some value in it, because $42 is not a small amount of money. Now, we're going to keep going, and you can actually see, hey, we don't see any sales rank drops, throughout February and March. So this is, again, a book that doesn't really sell very often. Then it looks like the used price actually comes down. And again, we see the next sales rank drop happen here at $20.59. And so what that tells us, once again, is that the book must have sold for at least $20 in used condition. Same thing, we're going to go left or right, and we can see at the next sales rank drop, we're at $20.29. The book must have sold for at least that amount. Again, at $20.49, the book must have sold for at least that amount. And we see a cluster of 3 more sales here. Again, infrequent, but somewhat consistent. Again, sells at the $20 mark. And so what I'm seeing here is data to show that this book is very frequently selling for the $20 mark at the lowest. And again, some of those sales could have been a little bit higher. Some of those sales could be FBA offers that are a little bit higher, and so on. And we'll get into that. We'll dive into that a little bit deeper. And then you can actually see there's been a sale here at $15, again at the minimum, and it looks like another sale here at $9. Now, what you need to do as a BookMine member is make the educated guess about whether or not you think today's price is below what the book normally sells for. This book appears in the last year to normally sell for about $20. It's currently priced at about $12. And as you get more experience, you'll understand what sort of margin you need to have between what you buy it for versus what you sell it for to determine whether or not you'll make money. The easiest way to do this, though, is to just use like an FBA calculator. There's an FBA calculator, that you could probably get as a free Chrome extension. I personally like to use SellerAmp because it has other features that I enjoy using. But just to show, or prove this point, if I were to buy the book for $12.72, and if I say that, most of the time the book is selling for $20, you'd actually see that I would actually lose money if I were to buy this particular book for $12 and then list it and sell it for $20. And so again, over time, you'll start to understand, okay, what sort of difference between what I buy the book for versus what I sell the book for, like what sort of margin is needed for me to actually make money. Now, the other thing that you might do is also not just look at 1 year's worth of data, but you actually might look for a longer period of time to see if you can get information about whether or not, this last year is a fluke, and whether or not the book might perform, much better into the future based upon what you see in the past. Now, and so for this particular book, you can actually see it actually came out in 1997, so it's a very old book. When you think of this being a textbook, you can actually see, it looks like a book that was made in, published in 1997. And so what you could think is, okay, well, what has this book sold for in the past when I go in the past? And so what I can see is all I have to do, again, is look at what was the used price when the sales rank is dropping. And you've got tons of what we would call like sold completed listings, or a bunch of evidence to show what this book would have sold for at the least. So we could, again, left click, drag, and drop to zoom into 2017, 2018. We go, okay, hey, this book can even sell into the 40s. Why? Because we know that the sales rank is improving. We know that the sales rank is dropping when this book is $42, when the book is at $40, and even up here when it's at $60, when it's at $65. What we're building is a track record. We're building evidence of what the book has sold for in the past, and we should use that evidence and we should use that track record as us, as a way for us to make an educated guess about how the book will perform in the future. And I'll start by saying there's no way that we can 100% be accurate all the time, but all you need to do is make good educated guesses and be right the majority of the time, 70, 80, 90% of the time. If you can do this well, you're going to make a ton of money, because even on the books that don't perform as well as you thought they would have, you can sell them for maybe a little bit of a loss. You can sell them for break even, make a couple of bucks profit. But this particular book looks like a book that this year has been performing maybe a little bit lower than what it normally performs at, but it generally is at kind of the lowest price you could really ever pick this book up for. Sure, there have been other times when it's been this low, but I would also argue that, hey, then it has history of going back up and selling in the 40s or 50s. So this, for me, because of the fact that this is a book that came out in 1997, this is a book that's probably, a book that is still going to see, demand into the future because it's already, 2 decades old, getting close to 3 decades old, that this is a book that, for me, if I were to buy $12, I'd be probably pricing this at $35 to $40, again, because we have historical sales of that in the past. Now, again, we could do the same concept with a bunch of other books as well. Like, for example, we can take a look at this book here. This is a textbook? Let's take a look. So this is a private pilot handbook. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a college textbook, but it's definitely used in some sort of training class probably. And so again, what we can do is the same thing. Let's look at what the lowest used price is without sales rank, and we can say, hey, this book is over this last year been $14. It's been down to 11, 12, 14. It certainly has not gotten been as high as the previous book that we looked at. Its price range generally tends to be between $10 and $14. And everyone remember, right? The price of gasoline fluctuates. The price of eggs fluctuate. The price of everything fluctuates, and books are no different. So the lowest used price here is also going to fluctuate, but you're looking for a general range of what is the lowest used price of this book. It looks like generally between, the 10 to 14 mark. Now, recently you can actually see it's come down here all the way down to about $6. And again, the next layer is let's add sales rank to see, is the book actually selling? And in this case, we see a ton of history to prove that yes, when this lowest used price is 14 or 15 bucks, we see plenty of sales rank drops, which indicates that, hey, this book is actually selling for at least that amount of money. Certainly, if you pick this book up at a thrift store or you got it for free, you got it for really cheap, this is a book that you could send in and you can make some money selling. Now, this particular book, again, it looks like you can buy it for $9.76 all in shipping. This book generally looks like it's going to sell right around the $14, $15 mark. There's not enough margin for this book. And again, you'll get better at this over time as you understand how to read Keepa graphs, and it'll become almost like second nature. It'll be like riding a bicycle or literally driving a car. In the beginning, it seems scary, which it is in the beginning, but you get used to it, and then it almost becomes automatic. You don't even think about it, right? It's just like second nature. So hopefully that's starting to make sense. Let's see if we can't find a book quickly here that looks incredibly undervalued, maybe something that we would be considering picking up here. So I'm just going to, let's say, take this book, for example. Let's open up the Keepa graph. This all-in price is $39.90, and you can see that's what the current price is today. Again, what we're going to do is look at, well, what was the lowest used price of this book over the last year, and what does this book appear to be selling for? So, for example, let's just zoom into November and December. I'm seeing that the lowest used price generally throughout this period of time is right around $100, $105. And is the book actually selling, though? Remember, you could list a book on Amazon for whatever you want. You could charge 1 penny, or you can charge $5 million, whatever you want. But what is the book actually selling for? So in this case, hey, boom, a sales rank drop. What was the lowest used price? $105. What was the lowest used price there? $105. Now, this one here is a little bit tricky. This is something that you'll learn with experience. You actually see how the sales rank dropped slightly after you see the used price drop or dip here from $105 down to $11 and $22. Now, what you need to understand is that Keepa isn't perfect at when it records sales rank drops. It doesn't always necessarily line up exactly with the lowest used price. When you see that lowest used price drop. And so in this case, what I would actually assume is that this sales rank drop, which indicates again that the book sold that became more popular, is more than likely occurred when the price dropped to $11. Somebody probably came in and just picked it up right away. Now, these other sales are definitely at $105. $105, you got $98, you got $99. Then you got to sell at $79. It sells $79. Again, this is at the lowest used price. Oftentimes, that means it's going to be a fulfillment by merchant seller. It's going to be, acceptable copy. Certainly, you will at times be able to sell your book for more than that lowest used price. All we're doing is trying to establish, an historical track record of what the book has been selling for at the minimum. What is its intrinsic value? So then we come down here into February, and it's like, hey, we had to sell at $79. Then, hey, the price dropped down to $47. We saw a sale. Then it dropped down to $33. We saw a couple sales. And then the price dropped back up to $79. We see a sales rank drop at $79. And then we kind of enter in May and June, and we say, okay, sales rank drop at $75, $78, $62. and so on. It gets down a little bit lower, 36 at 39. You're like, oh no, maybe the book is losing value, but then the book goes back up in price and another person buys it at $60. And so then now we're down to this period of time where the price of this book is at $35 plus shipping or $39. And so what we would need to do is figure out, okay, is this a book that we would want to buy? Is this a book that we think is flippable? Well, I would say certainly in the beginning of the year, this book could sell for $100. It looks like recently maybe it's selling a little less than that, $60 to $70. So is there enough margin there? There's certainly some margin out there to make money. And again, what I like to do specifically is look further into time, further back into time and see what was the used price in the past. And in this particular case, for whatever reason, the used price was actually significantly lower than what even the lowest used price is now. And for some reason, this book has performed much better over the past year relative to what it had normally, performs at. And again, how do I know that? Well, because the lowest used price throughout these years, 2018, 2019, 2021, 2022, is significantly lower. I mean, obviously it's selling. There's tons of sales drops, but it didn't nearly perform as well here. So hopefully that's making sense there. Here's a book that looks to be a great seasonal book that we could pick up here. And you can actually see, again, let's get rid of these other things. We have to talk about those still. But what you can see is, again, when we're looking at sales rank, we see these sort of U-shaped patterns, which indicate seasonality. And so again, I'm going to take my marker here and get my green color. And we can see that, hey, there's a U-shape there, there's a U-shape there, and a U-shape there. There's tons of sales happening here, and there, because this is a book specifically that's for, specifically a college textbook. Now, what you can actually see is that the used price is sitting down here at $14 plus shipping. What we know is that, hey, this book appears to be selling for $35 during the, $35 here, maybe actually a little bit higher at the beginning of the season, selling for about $35 there and selling for about $32 here. Now we're at $14. So this is a book that has good seasonality, and it's a book that also has been this low in the past and recovered and done well going into the textbook season. How do I know that? Because back here in October and November, the lowest used price was right around $12, $13. And then as soon as those copies sold out, you can see how the prices went back up. And again, this is a great book with seasonality. So here's a book you'd buy there, and you would sell and wait for the next textbook season, which is January. So you'd buy it, send it to your prep center, or if you're using, if you're listing yourself, you'd use a listing software like GoToLister, you would ship it to an Amazon warehouse, and your expectation would be to probably sell this during January. Why? Because that's the next textbook season. That's the next period of time when this book is going to have the highest degree of likelihood of selling. Okay. Now, some things that you're going to need to understand as you become more experienced is that when you sell books and when you're approaching a season, you should be probably pricing higher because of the fact that there's increased demand and the used price in the past has gone up. That pattern is likely to repeat in the future. And so you should be anticipating that this book at $14.76 is certainly not going to be $14 when it comes January. And so if you're going to buy this book using BookMine, then you would probably set your target there at $39.99, maybe $40. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about how, you're going to be a prime eligible seller, how you have a little bit of what's called the prime bump or the prime gap. And again, that's going to be a little bit later on. So hopefully that makes sense to you there. And I think what we can do is actually start layering on and adding some more features here. So let's go ahead and delete what I've got for drawing there. The next thing that we're going to do is actually look at the Amazon new price, this yellow button, this Amazon box, okay? This particular one looks a little bit weird, so let's actually look at something that's not so drastic. Let's look at something that's incredibly simple to look at. For example, this one here. We're going to get rid of everything else except for this little button that says Amazon. All you need to know is that when you see this yellow shaded box, that means Amazon is currently on the listing, and you can see that there's a price right now. The price right there is $29.95. This represents what Amazon is selling the book for in new condition. Now, the reason why that's so incredibly important is it is a ceiling for how high we can charge for our used condition copy book. Why? Because you just have to think logically, right? If Amazon is willing to ship me this product for $29.95 free shipping, why in the world would I pay any more than that to get a used copy? I certainly, and you probably do, probably value a new copy more than you do a used copy. Why? Because it's brand new. It's never been used. And so if Amazon's listing this for $29.95, that is a ceiling price for how high we're able to price our used book up against. Now, if I price my used book at $29.95, someone's going to come to this listing and go, do I want to buy this book for $29.95 in new condition? Or do I want to buy it for $29.95 in used condition? Well, you can answer that question yourself. I mean, it's pretty simple. You would buy the book in new condition. And so what you need to know is that we're probably going to be pricing under that. Not probably. We will be pricing underneath that threshold. And how much, wiggle room there is between that is probably going to be determined based upon the sales rank or how low it gets, how popular the book is. Because every time someone comes to this listing, they have to make that guess. They're going to be like, hey, not that guess. They have to make that decision. Am I going to save $1 or $2 or $5? At what point, at what savings does it make sense for me to buy the book used rather than new? So anyways, that is the Amazon new price. Now, what I'm also going to do is show this blue button, which is the new third-party price. Now, remember that third-party sellers like ourselves, they can also sell books in new condition. Now, I personally wouldn't recommend selling a book in new condition on Amazon unless you have an invoice that states and proves that you bought it in new condition and that it is a new item. But regardless, there are third-party sellers on Amazon, like you and me, that can list books in new condition. And that price, that lowest price, is represented by this blue line, $29.95. And again, in this case, this is just the lowest price. It doesn't necessarily include shipping. Sometimes the person might be listing it for $29.95 free shipping, but sometimes it's $29.95 plus $5 shipping or plus $12 shipping. But what this represents or what this means is the lowest third-party new price for this book. And generally, you should also think of that as a ceiling for how high your used book can go. So we're going to add both of these together. You can actually see how the blue and yellow line essentially overlap each other. And that's because a third-party seller and Amazon are listed at the same price, $29.95 in new condition, with the exception of this period in November, where the third-party price actually was dropped down to $17.84 and then down and also to $18.89. Remember, as a third-party seller, you can list a product for whatever you want. Right? A person who's selling this book in new condition could ask 1 penny for it, or they could ask $50 million for it. Now, there's something called high pricing errors. Amazon's not going to let you price gouge. So my point in saying this is that remember that as a third-party seller, you can price a book for whatever price you want. And so all Keepa is doing is recording what that lowest new price is from a third-party new seller and from Amazon, and that's what we're seeing for this book here. Now, what we're going to do is now layer on the used price, and what you should notice in most cases is that the used price is lower than the new price. Why? Because just using logical reasoning, if someone is going to come to this listing and actually want or think that they might want to buy your used condition copy, it must be cheaper than the new copy. And so we can see that throughout most of the year, hey, yeah, that black line is lower than the new third-party price. And you ask Joji, why in the world was the used price at $45 in March when the new price is at $29.95? My answer to that is whoever is selling this book in used condition is not paying attention to the listing. Maybe they've got hundreds or even thousands of listings, thousands of books they're selling. They just, forgot about this book. Their repricer went wrong. Something went wrong. But what you need to understand is, remember, use logical reasoning here. None of the sales, if there were sales rank drops, none of the sales, for example, this one sale here, did not occur in used condition. Why? Because a logical human being would not pay $45 for a used condition copy of this book if they can buy it from Amazon or a new third-party seller for $29. So what that tells me is that clearly the book didn't sell for that in used condition. It must have sold in new condition for $29. Now, these sales rank drops, for example here, you can see that there's plenty of sales rank drops, and understanding whether or not they're in new condition or they're in used condition is not something that we can be super accurate on. We have to still take our best educated guess. When we talk about used offer count a little bit later, there is some way that we can kind of make predictions about whether or not it was a used copy or a new copy. But again, just use logical reasoning here. You've got, again, you could count them here. I can actually go back and use my pointer. We got 1 sale, we got 2 sales, we got 3 sales, 4 sales, 5 sales, 6 sales, 7 sales, 8 sales, 9 sales in this period of time. How many of those 9 sales were in new condition or in used condition? You know what? I don't know. But what I know is that if somebody were to buy this in used condition, they were spending at least $24.98. And how do I know that? It's because that was the lowest used price of this book at that period of time. So I know if someone were to buy this in used condition, they're paying at least $24. And if someone were buying it in new condition, they're paying $29. If I had to guess, a book that's $29 in new condition is really not that expensive. I would say probably the majority of these sales were coming in new condition, because if you think about an Amazon customer, probably out of the 9 opportunities where people were coming to this listing to buy the book, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 of them decided to buy it in new condition because they're willing to pay $5 more because they want it brand spanking new. But there's probably also the penny pinchers out there. They're like, you know what? I really need this book. Yeah, man, I'm more than happy to get the same content and save $5. Yeah, it might be beat up a little bit. It might have highlighting. It might have underlining. It might have dog-eared corners. It might have a stain on it. But you know what? It might also be a great condition copy. Whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm saving $5. I'm happy. So again, you're making an educated guess. It's not perfect. Again, we'll talk about used offer count, new offer count later in this video, because again, this is like a complete tutorial. But in this case, we can just say, let's make our best educated guess. Probably most of these sales were in new condition, but certainly probably a few of them were also in used condition as well. So hopefully this is starting to make sense for you guys. All we've done now is just basically layered basically the sales rank, the Amazon new price, the third-party new price, and the used price. Now, something that's really important is you might look at a Keepa graph here on BookMine. For example, these 3 Keepa graphs that we just looked at, they don't have that sort of orange shading or yellow shading like you see here. That is a dead giveaway that Amazon, as a new seller, is not selling that book. They don't actually have it in stock. And so what we can do is actually, this is a perfect example, by the way. Let's get rid of everything except for Amazon. There was a point in time when Amazon was on the listing for this book for $45, and we can actually zoom in. Again, left click, drag, and drop. We can actually see that they came in stock here on June 8th, and then they were out of stock here on June 12th. So in the past year, Amazon was selling this book new for $45 for a few days. What that tells us is that generally Amazon is not selling this book. Now let's look at the third-party sellers. Clearly, there have been third-party sellers on this listing the whole time. How do I know that? Because basically, if I go from left to right, there's no breaks in the new offer, or there's no breaks in the new price. So if I, again, use my pen here and I go left to right, you can see how basically if I go left to right, there's no breaks. There's always a continuous line going left to right over the whole year. It goes back up and goes down like this. Remember, the price of gas, the price of eggs always go up and down. The price of used books, of new books, they always fluctuate. It's just the way that the world works, right? The products are always changing in price. And so this is a book in particular that looks to have pretty much always been in stock in new condition. Now, if we look a little bit closer, we can say, hey, this new price has been all over the place. It's been as high as $116. It's been as low as $37. It even dropped really low in June here, all the way down to $25. So it's kind of been really wild. It's been all over the place. Now, again, we can look at the used price here. And remember what we just said a little bit earlier. Think of the Amazon new price. Think of the third-party new price as the ceiling. It doesn't really make sense for us to be charging more money for a used copy when there's new copies available, right? And so what we can say is, hey, this particular book, it looks like it's been listed at $12, at $30, at $34. It's been down here as low as $10. And again, remember, the price of goods change, the price of used books change. Now, if we overlap sales rank, we go, oh, hey, yeah, this book is definitely selling. But the question is it selling in used condition? Is it selling in new condition? Well, there's a couple things we can glean. What we know is that the book is certainly selling, at least in this period of time. It was selling for at least $30. How do I know that? Because at this period of time, the lowest used price was $34. The sales rank dropped. So that told us it sold for at least $34. It could have been in a new copy, in new condition. It could have been a very good condition copy. It could have been from, a buy box. It could have been from an Amazon FBAU seller in the buy box. Sorry. It could have been from any of those. But we know at least a baseline that the book holds value, that it sells for at least a certain amount of money. In this case, it's selling for $38, $39 at least. And of course, you can see how the used price comes back up and it comes back down. And again, there's a lot more that we need to look at, but we've got a really good foundation here with all these things. Now, the next thing that we're going to layer on is actually called the buy box used price. This right here, these little purple buttons here. Okay, they're not buttons, they're actually diamonds. What this represents is the buy box used price. Now, what you'll notice is that if I just come down here to the Keepa graph and I click day, over the last day, you can see that the buy box used price says $16.05. It actually will even tell you the seller deluxe deals. It'll tell you a bunch of information here, what their used price was. It'll tell you when they were first seen on the listing, when they were last seen on the listing. And again, we'll have some, we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. But if we go to the actual Amazon listing, to give you some reference for what this means, it's the buy box used price. What the heck is the buy box? The buy box is this box on the Amazon listing page here, and hopefully I can move this. Yeah, it's basically this box here. This is called the buy box. Okay, so it's basically a big box on the Amazon listing, and in that box is a featured offer. In this case, we're looking at a used feature offer. How do I know that? Because it simply says used. It says used offer right there. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to be like that, but it says used offer. There's the price, $16.05. Why is the buy box so important? If you win the buy box as a seller, that means that you're the featured offer and there's the least friction possible for someone to buy your book. What do I mean by that? Well, somebody who wants to buy this book would just show up and go add to cart. That's like the simplest thing someone can do. They want this book. They're not willing to do any research. They just want the book. They want it in the least amount of time spent. They're just going to come here and click add to cart. And the reason why that's so powerful is because if they click add to cart, then they can essentially check out and they're done with their day. That's it. It's super simple. If someone has to come here and look at the other offers, it's more work for them. If I'm like, you know what, no, I don't really want to buy it for 16, or I don't know if that's a good deal. You know what, I want to actually open up the listing page and I want to scroll through the offers and I want to read, all the description notes. Like that takes more work. That's more friction. That's harder for someone to buy. So again, all we're looking at here with these sort of purple dots, purple triangles, or actually not triangles, they're diamonds, is what that buy box use price has been throughout the last year. And for this particular book, you can see it's been wild. It's been all over the place. Currently, it's significantly low, like significantly lower than what it's normally been at. It's been as high as $63. It's been as low as $26. And what I would say here is you're trying to find a pretty good median or a pretty good range for kind of where is that buy box staying. Again, prices are going to fluctuate all the time. There's no way that you can pinpoint it down to this book is worth exactly $51.27. No, what you can do is say that this book is worth between a certain range. You could say, hey, from basically what I've been able to see, this book looks like it's generally in this range. Okay, so it looks like the used buy box is generally in that $35 to $50 range, and it probably depends on other factors, but that's generally kind of what the used buy box is at. And so that gives you a good indication of what the prime bump is or what the prime gap is. And you're like, what the heck is the prime gap, Joji? What the heck is the prime bump? Well, the prime bump or the prime gap is simply the difference between the lowest use price on Amazon and that buy box price. That's called the prime bump. Now, why it's called the prime bump is because generally the lowest use price is an offer from an FBM seller. That's somebody who is holding the book in their warehouse or holding the book at their own home, and they're shipping the book to the customer. In other words, there's no prime benefits. You're not prime eligible. That's person who's doing the fulfillment themselves. Now, if you talk about the buy box, the person winning the buy box, normally the buy box winner is going to be an FBA seller. Not all the time, because sometimes an FBA seller isn't on the listing, but in most cases, the buy box winner is going to be generally the lowest FBA offer or somebody who's kind of within a certain percentage of the lowest FBA offer. Okay? And so the difference between those two values is what we call the prime bump or the prime gap. For example, if we just zoom into this period of time here, it looks like, let's make this just super easy here. Let's zoom in to February 23rd to 24th. And I know I'm getting super zoomed in here, so hopefully this isn't confusing people. But here's the used price at $39.50. Here's the buy box price at $44. The difference between those two values is what is called the prime bump or the prime gap. So the difference between this price and this price, that's called the prime bump, or that's called the prime gap. Okay. Now the question is someone willing to pay more money to get the book shipped to them faster? Because remember, oftentimes that lowest use price is an FBM seller, and as an FBM seller, someone who doesn't have the same capabilities as Amazon Prime to get books shipped to you in 2 days, that book is going to take longer to get to the customer. Right? If you're merchant fulfilling a book, oftentimes you might not get the book. You might not the customer might not get the book for 7 to 10 to 14 days after you ship it. Versus when Amazon Prime ships it, it's going to be there and maybe sometimes same day, next day, or 2 days. And so the answer is yes, there is definitely something called the prime bump or the prime gap. And oftentimes you will be selling your books for more than the lowest use price because you do have a competitive advantage being an FBA seller. Your competitive advantage is that it's prime eligible, that basically the person can get the book to them in 2 days rather than 10 or 14 days. And there's value associated with getting a book sooner, right? People are always willing to pay for time. I'm willing to pay a little extra money to get this book shipped to me faster. And so in that case, oftentimes what you see as the buy box use price is often what the book is actually selling for, because of the fact that it's incredibly simple for someone to come to the listing, click add to cart, regardless of whether or not that is the actual cheapest, price for this book or not, and get it shipped to them in a very short period of time. Now, one thing that we do need to be incredibly careful with, and this is what makes BookMine so beautiful, is that we can't just always exploit the prime gap, or always think that we can unrealistically exploit the prime gap. And what I mean by that is there's other book sourcing softwares that essentially the whole model relies on finding books that have a big prime gap between the two. Hey, buy it down here for $5 and sell it up here for $35. But what you also have to understand inherently is that some books have value and some books don't. And so your business model can't be built off of exploiting the prime gap, because then your business model is built on the notion that people are only willing to buy your books because of the fact that they can get the book from you faster than from other people. You can definitely sell books that way, but it's just not a very sustainable business model. What you should instead be doing, and this is what we teach with BookMine, is you should be finding books that are actually listed below their historical selling value. This book here, you can see it's sitting down here at $13.99 free shipping. It has sells as high as $50 at the lowest use price. That's a book that is undervalued, right? What I'm going to do is actually just go to Keepa Product Finder. And for some of you who are new to Keepa, I might blow your mind with this. But again, there's just a lot with Keepa. Keepa Product Finder, I'm going to go to the data tab. I'm going to go to Product Finder. I'm going to find a book that a lot of other softwares would find and tell you to buy, which is a book you should absolutely not buy. And I'll tell you why. So for example, what we're going to do is look for anything that has a use price, let's say under $8 right now. And we're going to scroll down and also say, we want up here, we want the buy box use price to be $50 or more. Okay. So we've got 2,600 products that meet that criteria. We're going to look at the book category here. And again, the purpose of this video is not to show Keepa Product Finder. It's just an in-depth Keepa tutorial for you to understand how to value books and what you should buy them for and what you should sell them for. But we're trying to find a book that is something that just is exploiting the prime gap and what's not built on. So for example, what we don't want you to build your business on. So for example, another software might say, hey, take a look at this book. The buy box is at like $58 and the lowest use price is $3. So buy it for $3 and sell for $58. Like, look at this. You could buy it for $12.88 and flip it for $58. And so some softwares out there, or, definitely people who don't understand how to value a book or read what a book is worth, will do that. They'll buy a book for $12.88 with the hopes that they can sell for $58.60 and go, you know what, I'm going to make a $27 profit on this book when it sells. No, because this book is not worth $58. You can see for the majority of this year, this book has been, at the most, it's been up at $14, but generally, it's been listed at right around $5. And even with that, it's a book that has very few sales rank drops. I mean, this is a book that might sell 20, 25, 30 times per year. It's selling a couple of times a month, not very much. And so the point here is that even though, yes, there is a prime gap, even though, yes, you should expect to sell your book for more than the lowest use price, don't build your business on exploiting the prime gap with buying a bunch of books that are worthless with the hopes of selling them for what's called an inflated buy box. This is an inflated buy box. Is it possible that someone could come and buy this book for $58? Of course it is. And that does happen from time to time. But it's not going to happen repeatedly or consistently or be a sustainable business model. Why? Because history tells us this book is not worth anything near $58. This book is basically worth $5 to $7 to $10. And even at that, not very many people are even willing to buy it. So this is a book that's not really worth $58. The only way you'd make money on this book is if you have somebody and you get very lucky, like they come and they just added a cart and they decide to buy. And again, it does happen from time to time, but the purpose of BookMine is to find books that are truly undervalued that you can buy and sell for what they historically sell for. So again, another example, here's a book at $9. You can see plenty of sales rank drops in the 20s. Again, that's not the buy box use price. That's just the lowest use price. You have a book that's currently listed at $9. It generally sells for $20. And it could be, here's another example. It's a book listed for $10. Generally sells in the $25 to $30 range. And so that's the reason why BookMine is so cool, is because we're looking at the data in a different way than other softwares. We're looking at what is the evidence of historical sales, what is the current use price, and is there a difference between those two prices? So hopefully that makes sense. And we can go back here to the rest. So What I would honestly recommend, if you're somebody who's new, and even if you're somebody who's experienced, there's really not that many things you need on the Keepa graph. If I'm being honest, all I really have when I'm looking at a Keepa graph, or at least this top Keepa graph, because there are other Keepa graphs which we'll get to here shortly. On this main Keepa graph, these are the 4 things I'm looking at. I'm looking at the sales rank. Why? Because I want to know, does the book sell? And if so, does it have seasonality? How often does it sell? Does it sell a ton? Does it not sell very much? I want to know, is Amazon on the listing? Why? Because that's the ceiling price. We can't list our book for more than the ceiling price. What is the lowest use price? Because that kind of represents the lowest, that kind of represents the inherent value of the book. That represents what the market is willing to offer the book to to everyone out there in the market for sale for. And then I'm interested in, what's the buy box? Is there a little bit of a prime bump, or what is that buy box normally registered at? So those 4 things. And I should say the 5th thing, and the new third-party price. Sorry, that should also be there as well. I knew I was missing something, because that also represents that sort of ceiling price, especially when Amazon's not on the listing. For example, if we kind of dig in a little bit deeper to this period of time, you can see how when Amazon came on the listing, let's get rid of maybe sales rank here, and let's get rid of these 2. Let's just look at the new third-party price in Amazon. You can see that the new third-party price was $71. As soon as Amazon came on the listing at $45, you can see how the new price dropped to $45. So whoever the new third-party seller was understood that, hey, as a new third-party seller, I can't compete with Amazon. I'm certainly not going to be able to sell my book in new condition for more than their book in new condition. Amazon always is going to kind of have priority. And so you can see that's why they dropped the price down to $45. It's also the same reason that as soon as Amazon sold out and went out of stock, they moved their price back up to $71, because they're like, oh, that ceiling is gone. Oh, guess what? Now I'm the ceiling. And so that's what we see. Now, again, these are the things that I'm currently using: sales rank, Amazon, the new third-party price, the buy box use price, and the use price. All these other things, collectible has I would say is the next most important thing to include. Even that, though, I generally don't have on. Pretty much everything else you see here is just extra stuff that's going to clutter your brain. It's other stuff that you don't really need to make an educated decision, and it's actually going to make it harder, right? We want to make this as simple as possible, but we still need a data point. So we need the most crucial data points, but we want the fewest data points so that we can be clear in our mind and make, good educated guesses. All I need to do is add everything here. If I were to add everything, I hope you can see that this is just becomes incredibly hard to read. And now all of a sudden you want to kill me, because you're like, Jojo, what the heck is going on here? Like, look how crazy this is. Like, trying to decipher all this information is just, not only does it make, the experience slow, but it makes just kind of an, paralysis by analysis kind of thing. So you don't need all this other stuff. This is all extra stuff that's not necessary. You don't need to know what the used like new price was, what the used good or acceptable price is. All you need to know is these 5 things, which is: how often does the book sell? Does it have seasonality? Is Amazon on the listing? If so, what's the ceiling price? Are there new third-party sellers on the listing? If so, what's the ceiling price? What's the lowest use price? Kind of what's its inherent value? And then what's the buy box price? What's the prime gap? And if you know those things, then you're rocking. Hopefully you're still staying with me. By the way, it's 11:17 p.m. at night. The reason why I do online book arbitrage, and the reason why I do this, is because this is when my son and my wife are in bed, and I like to do this as a hobby. And the reason why I love online book arbitrage is you can do it anytime during the day, anywhere on planet Earth, as long as you have an internet connection. That's because Amazon's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you can buy books whenever you want, unlike going to a thrift store, which is only open during a certain hour of the day, certain time of the day, that has a limited inventory, yada, yada. I'm just kind of babbling at this point. Now, again, this is a full Keepa tutorial, so we need to go much, much further than this. And so now what we're going to do is actually show this bottom graph here, which is going to show a couple of very important things. Okay, so hopefully you're still with me. If you're all the way here through the video, if you're enjoying this and you're finding value, the number one thing that you can do to support the channel is just share it with somebody. Share the video with somebody. If you know somebody else in your family, or you have a relative, or a friend that's doing Amazon FBA, they're selling books and they don't really understand what they're doing, share this video with them. Like the video, subscribe, that helps out a ton. But let's get back to the video. All right, so this bottom Keepa graph is more simple in that there's fewer features that you can add. Now, the first thing and the most important thing that we're going to look at is something called the used offer count. Now, again, for this part, we're only looking at this bottom Keepa graph. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I draw a line here we're looking only at this graph here. We're not looking at that top graph anymore. Although generally when we are looking at a book, we are looking at both of them simultaneously, but we're going to isolate and just look at this bottom graph here. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So what you need to understand is that the used offer count represents the number of offers on the listing. What does that mean? It simply just means how many sellers on the listing. So if I click, I was looking at a year, but if I look at a day and I look at the used offer count, it says 40. What that means is if I go to the Amazon listing and I look at the used offers, it should say 40. Now notice it says 52. That's because this is new and used offers, but we're only looking at new offers there. So let's go and click on the offers here. And what we're going to do is over on the side here, I have to move these. Under filter, I'm just going to say we're looking specifically for used condition copies. So I have to move that as well. I'm looking for used condition copies, and you'll see it says 39. You're like, well, Joji, that's not 40. Well, that's 39 other options plus this used option up here, up there. So there's a total of 40 options. It means the number of sellers. It does not mean, this is really, really important. It does not mean the number of copies. It means the number of sellers. Why is that important? Because Glenn the bookseller has 2 in stock. Hopefully that makes sense, right? These other sellers have 1 in stock. Basically, all these other sellers for this particular book only have 1 in stock. But you could, and you do see this on many listings, especially for textbooks, you'll see some mega textbook sellers that have like 50 in stock. And so even though they only count as 1 on that used offer count graph, they might have 50 copies or 100 copies or 200 copies. So there's a difference between stock quantity, the number of copies available from a seller, and offer count, which simply is just how many sellers are on the listing. So again, if we look at this bottom Keepa graph for this particular book, what we can see is that, hey, currently there's 40 used offers on this book. And again, that doesn't mean that there's 40 copies in stock. And by the way, if you're not seeing this stock quantity here display, which you'll see that it says revealed by Keepa, it's because you need to enable that. So maybe you skipped the beginning part of this video, but if you want that to show, what you need to do is go to your settings. You need to go to Keepa, Keepa.com, come over here to the top right where your profile is, click on the settings button, go to the website cog, and scroll down until you see display stock quantity and offer listing pages, and make sure that you default that to yes, because it's actually defaulted as no, okay? So make sure you do that. All right, so again, we're looking at used offer count now. So offer count just simply means the number of people on the listing, and generally what we want to see in this bottom graph when we're looking at used offer count is just to make sure that nothing crazy is going on. What you should absolutely expect to see with the book that's selling, again, we know that this book is selling because we see the sales run going up and down, and you guys know this at this point in time. So we know the book is selling. What you should also see then on the used offer count graph is that the used offer count ebbs and flows, that it changes. Think about it logically. If people are buying the book, then that means people who are selling the book, they're no longer on the listing anymore because somebody bought their copy, right? What we should also expect though is that new people come on the listing with the book because, you know, people every day go out to thrift stores and scan books. There's bulk book operations that are picking up books from libraries and charities, and they're listing the book on Amazon. So there's this constant ebb and flow of new sellers coming on the listing, which adds to the offer count, and then the offer count going back down because people actually end up buying the book, and that book goes to the customer. It's no longer an active listing on Amazon. It's gone, right? The customer bought it. So what we see is a sort of natural ebb and flow in the used offer count. Now, whenever you see kind of large swings in used offer count, when you see large dips in the offer count like this, as long as it's kind of like a bumpy ride down and it's not like a straight line down, that's a good sign that this is just a book that at that point in time is just selling a lot more than we're replenishing with new copies coming on the listing, with new sellers coming on the listing. And generally, you would expect this to happen during times of high seasonality, like, for example, textbook season, or, for example, you know, winter when Christmas is right around the corner, or, you know, when Thanksgiving's right around the corner, or these periods of time when we have a lot of people buying books. And so probably what we can do here is probably see a little bit of this in some other Keepa graphs. So let's see, in particular with this book, I guess we don't see it too much there. What we'll do is actually come up to the top. Actually, we'll look at this one here. This probably will show a little bit of it, but let's take a look. Okay, so you can kind of see it. In this case, you actually see how the used offer count was at 12, then it gets down there to 3, and you can see that's right around in the same period of time when the where the sales run gets really low. You can also see that a little bit here as well, and a little bit there as well. And again, this is happening during the actual season. Let's see if maybe we can find a better example though. So I'm going to go back up, and change selling meter to find really, really fast moving books. And we're going to see if we can find a better example of this used offer count going down. And again, there's a correlation between the two, right? When you see the sales rank kind of get this U shape and get really, really low, you should see that used offer count drop, pretty significantly. So let's see if we open up a couple here, see if we can't find something that is a good indicator of that. Maybe this one as well. So let's see. So we see, like, for example, would see this a little bit here. The sales rank gets incredibly low, and we can see how that offer count starts coming down. Maybe we can see it for this one. In particular, you can see it really well for this last season. You can actually see how when the sales rank, again, let me use my pen here. When the sales rank gets really low, right around here, you can actually see how the used offer count, let's go with black, how the offer count starts going down. Okay, why is that? Because if the book is becoming more popular and a bunch of people are buying the book, then that just means that there are fewer copies available. Why? Because people are actually buying them. And so you kind of see this inverse relationship between the two. When the sales rank, not inverse, actually this is not an inverse relationship. When the sales rank goes down, you should see the used offer count go down, and you should also see the used price kind of go up a little bit, which in this particular example doesn't really look like that happened much. Maybe let's see in other examples. Let's see if we go further back into time. Here might be a good example. Yeah, let's actually get rid of everything else except for these. So let's again use our pen for this particular book. And again, this is back in 2022, but I'm just trying to illustrate a point here. This is generally what you would tend to see for books. So what you'll see if we use my green line here for sales rank, see how the sales rank gets really low there. Okay, so the sales rank, if this book gets low because the book is more popular, it's selling a lot more. And then what we would expect to see is that the used offer count goes down like this. Okay, and then we also expect the used price, remember the black line here represents the used price, we expect this to go up in an inverse relationship to the sales rank, right? Because of the fact that the book is becoming more popular and the number of offers are going down, then the used prices tend to go up like that. Okay, and it's not like it's perfect in every scenario, but that's kind of the general trend that you'll tend to see there. Okay, so let's get rid of everything. Now, what we can do now is also add the new offer count. This is the next most important thing, which is this blue line. Let's get rid of the used offer count. What the new offer count represents is just simply how many new third-party sellers on the listing. Again, not the stock quantity, now how many new copies are available, but just simply how many new sellers on the listing. And so what we can see for this book is pretty obvious that, hey, it follows a similar pattern as that used offer count. And so what we're going to do here is, again, go ahead and color this in green. Here's a sales rank. It gets really low here. Oh, let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger. Let's see. Here we go. So the sales rank gets really low. You have that U-shaped pattern there. Like we mentioned before already, we have the use price go up like this and eventually come back down as the sales rank goes back up. But then what we see for the new offer count is that actually goes down as well. And so similar to having the used offer count on it like this, the used offer count also goes down at the same rate that the kind of new offer count goes. They both go down. It makes sense, right? Because it's not like people are only buying the used copies, they're also buying the new copies. And so we're seeing them both go down kind of at the same period of time. So used and new offer counts are really important there because it gives you a good indicator of books, how they're performing. Are they, and a great example of this is actually to go back to BookMine. And what we'll do is take a look at books that are currently in really high supply. So what we could do is, for example, under supply meter, let's look at the books that are like an extreme or very extreme oversupply. Let's just take a look at those, and I can kind of show you some examples of how we have, used offer counts increasing. So let's take a look. Potentially, let's look at this one here. I'm going to exit out some of these other tabs, making my computer run a little bit slower here. That should be okay. Okay, so for example, this is a book that came back as being in extreme oversupply. Why? Very simple, right? If you look at the most recent few months, you'll notice that the actual used offer count has gone like this. Whoop, it's gone up. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? If the number of used sellers goes up or the number of new sellers go up, is that a good sign or a bad sign? That's generally a bad sign because it means more competition. It just means that there are more people selling the same thing. And if there are more people selling the same thing, what do you expect to happen to price? You generally expect the price to go down, which it did do, right? And that's why we see that here. Okay. Now, again, speaking on that same token, look at this back here. So we actually had Amazon go out of stock back here. Actually, let me use yellow. So see how the yellow line here disappears right there? So Amazon goes out of stock. The sales rank of this is really well, so it's really low. But then you actually see that both the used offer count goes to basically 0. Boom. And the new offer count also goes to 0. Why? Because the book is selling. And you actually see it goes out of stock. And so this is a really good point. If you don't see the used offer count being a line left or right that's complete, like if you see blank spaces here, it means that there were no used offers on the listing at that point in time. So this is a book that Amazon was selling. Also, there are used copies and new copies available, but Amazon went out of stock, and as soon as Amazon went out of stock, the new third-party sellers went out of stock, the used sellers went out of stock, and then you can actually see how the sales rank started going up pretty substantially. You can actually see that even though the sales rank was down here, it actually ends up here, only really due to the fact that there's nothing in stock, right? Think about it logically. If there's no offers on the listing, if you don't have the opportunity to buy the book, then the sales rank of the book goes up. It gets worse because the book's not selling. There are no offers available. The book isn't selling. Therefore, the sales rank gets higher. Now, what generally tends to happen here is that the black line, like the used price, starts to go up a little bit though. And if anyone new came on the listing was actually paying attention, they could probably start charging prices up here, $30, $40, $50. Why? Because remember, when Amazon's gone, that ceiling price is gone. Now, if there's still a lot of demand, there's somebody out there who's willing to pay double or triple the price because they might really need this book. So a lot really going on with this Keepa graph here. And I think this was an awesome one to talk about. So let's see what else we need to discuss, what we need to talk about. So we've already looked at used offer count and new offer count. We looked at a rising offer count. Let's look at maybe another example of a rising offer count. For example, this one here. Now, just because the used offer count's rising doesn't necessarily mean you should avoid it. It just means that you should understand that that's happening. Certainly for seasonal books, let's say college textbooks, or certainly for books about, let's say, Christmas or Halloween, you actually would expect the used offer count to increase after the season because that's when demand dies. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because remember, if the used offer count goes up, generally what that means is prices tend to go down. And here's a great example of that. So again, let's go back to used offer count. And you can see how the used offer count is starting to go up. And let's make this a little bit bigger. The used offer count is starting to go up here. And as a result, you see this used price starting to come down a little bit. But remember that this is a seasonal book when the sales rank gets really low, right? The sales rank gets low there, it gets low there, and it goes low here for a January textbook season, a May textbook season, and an August textbook season. And what we tend to see is that the prices of this book get really high up here, right? They get higher than they've ever been. So the goal, and this is what you do with BookMine, and this is what you do with just book flipping in general and seasonal books, is you buy it when it's in the off season, which is, buy it right here. And your goal is to wait for the next textbook season and sell it up there. And that's kind of how you make money. So let me know, guys and gals, if you like this paint, if this is making sense to you or not. Maybe it's a little bit too confusing, but I'm trying to really help everyone out here and make sure that you guys are understanding books a lot in a much better way. Now, if we go back to BookMine here, then let's take a look at books that are actually not in the, let's say, extreme oversupply, but actually maybe in short supply. And actually, let's make sure to reset this first because we were looking at books that are selling very fast. Let's look at supply meter, books that are short supply or extremely short supply. So we'll look at this and that together. So we'll let BookMine load this. Let's go and take a look at maybe this one here. This says short supply. So let's take a look here. Okay, good. So why is this in short supply? Because if we look at what the offer count was just a couple months ago, so I'm going to click on this. Here is the offer count. It's hanging out right around, and again, offer count, like the y-axis over here. So this is probably in the 60 to 70 range, right? This is what the offer count was, and then it went down like this pretty substantially. So that's why we say, even though we've kind of recently gone up a little bit, we're still at a place where we're lower than where it was before. So this is a book which we would say is actually in, if I go back here, is actually in short supply. Now let's see if we can't find the book that's in extremely short supply. So I'm gonna go ahead and click out of that and supply meter. Let's only look at the extremely short supply one right now and see if this is a great example. So, this is a Christmas book as well, which is really cool. So let's take a look. Okay, perfect example right here. So this is an awesome graph for a lot of reasons. One, let's look at the sales rank. Well, first, let's look at just the subject matter of this book. This is called Alfie the Christmas Tree. Look at it, everyone. I hope you would look at this book and know when this book should sell. This book should sell for Christmas. It says Alfie the Christmas Tree. It's a picture of a Christmas tree. We know that it should sell. Now, does it sell? Well, when is Christmas? Christmas is December. So if someone wanted to buy the book, when would they buy it? They'd probably buy it in November or December leading up to Christmas, right? So we're going to go and take our pen again. We'll go and look at the sales rank and guess. Guess what we see. We see a few sales rank drops there, a sales rank drop there. Some frequency of sales rank drops is definitely selling, but then boom, in December it gets really low there. And so what that tells us is that, hey, super strong seasonal period there, which we expect. It actually sold out. How do I know it's sold out? Because again, you've been watching this video and you know that, hey, the black line down at the bottom represents the used offer count, and that used offer count went to 0. How do I know it went to 0? Because basically the used offer count is 0. There's no offers there for about a couple of months. And so what that tells us is that the book went out of stock. Eventually the book did come back in stock. It wasn't selling. Hopefully you guys and gals can predict why the book wasn't selling in February and March, why we don't see any sales rank drops. Why? Because this is a Christmas book. Who's going to buy a Christmas book in February, March, or April, or May? Apparently some people are still buying it in May and June. Probably people are flipping it. But in any case, the reason why this book came back as extremely short supply is, look at this. The offer count was at 25 and boom, someone came in and bought a bunch of copies. Now it's down to 5. So probably what happened, if we kind of zoom into the Keepa graph here and look a little bit more in-depthly, is you can see that the price dropped from $25 down here to 7. And probably what happened is a bunch of offers, a bunch of bulk booksellers who aren't paying attention to seasonality, all listed it at $7. And so someone came in and bought a bunch of copies. And this probably showed up on it did show up on BookMine, right? I mean, that's where we showed it from. But here's a book that probably pretty easily would sell for, if we look at past historical sales every Christmas, I mean, it could easily sell in the $40s to $50. So completely just an awesome book. Again, BookMine's going to find some of those awesome seasonal books as well. So let's see if there's anything else that we need to see here. We've got used offer count. We got new offer count. Okay, we can look at also collectible offer count. We didn't really look at the collectible price here. All you need to know is that Amazon does allow sellers to sell books in collectible condition, and they have certain guidelines for it. Usually it means that the book is signed, it's a first edition printing, there's something special about the book, which inherently makes the book more valuable, or at least somebody wants to note it. And so people can list it in collectible condition. Some important things you need to know about collectible condition, though, is that collectible offers are not buy box eligible, meaning that if you look at an Amazon listing and you look at the buy box, you don't have any ability to win the buy box if you're a collectible offer, which is kind of a bummer. And the other thing to note is that generally, you're going to sell your books much more quickly if you're listing your books in used condition rather than in collectible condition. So we don't actually see any collectible offers with this particular book. That just means that there haven't been any collectible offers on this particular book. But generally, you just want new and used offer count there. Now, you can have ratings and reviews, and I can kind of show you what that means simply. So review count is simply just the number of reviews on the listing, and this is kind of sourced between multiple formats of the book. So a lot of books will have like a paperback, and will have a loose leaf, or will have a hardcover, especially if they're a textbook. For example, this particular book has a hardcover and a paperback and a loose leaf, and so all these reviews here, these 393 reviews, or they call them ratings, but technically it's reviews. All these reviews are kind of like the global, like from all the marketplaces, from all the different formats together. Those are the number of reviews. And so you could always click on them and read them, and it doesn't really matter. All you need to know is that generally most of the books that you're buying should probably have a pretty high feedback rating, like at least 3 stars, 4 stars or more. Now, if it's a book that has really low stars, like maybe it's 1 out of 5 or 2 out of 5 stars, maybe it's a listing that's like a set that comes with multiple volumes, or it's some sort of book that comes with a supplemental material, and maybe it's very common for that for a used seller to not include that item. Oftentimes people are angry about that, and one example is there's like a Christmas book called the Golden Key. In order to go through the book, you need like an attachment or a key that comes with the book when you buy it in new condition. And of course, when people buy this book in used condition and sell on Amazon, they don't actually make sure it has the key. And so somebody who buys the book in used condition thinks it comes with a key. It doesn't come with a key. Oh, guess what? I'm giving you a 1-star review. Not the seller necessarily, but the listing will have bad reviews. Okay, so that's what the review count means. So it says 393 here, 393 there. You can see it says 393 up there. So that's the number of reviews. Now the rating is simply just its star rating. So basically 4.6. Really, those two things are just extra clutter. They really don't matter much. Review count has a little bit of usability when you have books that maybe don't sell very often, where maybe Keepa isn't tracking the sales rank very well anymore. But again, that's maybe more of an advanced Keepa tutorial. If you guys want an in-depth advanced Keepa tutorial that's like this, more so than, I guess, this is still like a very basic Keepa tutorial, even though I'm kind of going A to Z and it's like an ultimate Keepa tutorial, but I'm kind of generally pointing on things. I'm not going incredibly in-depth on a lot of stuff. So if you guys want a more advanced sort of long format, form style content that's unedited and just raw, let me know. And we can definitely put that together. I think it'd be really helpful. But these are the things that I have on a Keepa graph. Simply the sales rank, the Amazon and new third-party price, the used buy box, the used price, and the new and used offer count. And that's really all I really need to make some pretty good decisions about the books that I'm buying, right? We want to make this as simple as possible, but still make sure we're using data to make informed, educated guesses and informed decisions so that we can make money flipping books. Like, that's the whole point of this, right? Okay, there's still a lot that we need to get into here. So we actually need to talk about the Keepa Track product feature here. So for example, this Christmas book here, you actually see on the Keepa graph, if you're an astute student, which I'm sure you are, you're like, Jojo, what the heck is this dashed line on the bottom of the Keepa graph? I haven't seen that dashed line. And you'll see that it says desired price $10. Well, every product with Keepa, you have the option to track for a desired target price. And this definitely comes in handy if you're somebody who's starting to maybe build what's called a leads list, or maybe, leads list would be a list of books that you're potentially interested in buying if they reach a specific price or a target price or a desired price is what they call. Or you can use it as a replen tool. In other words, when you sell a book successfully and make a profit, don't forget about it, because sell it again and again and again. Whenever it gets to $10, because that's where you bought it at before, buy it, because you have actual evidence that you could sell for $35 or $40, and so you might want to track it. And so all you do is click this track product button, and in this case, you can see it says I'm already tracking this product, but when you click it for the first time, you'll see something like this. And there's three modes. There's a basic mode, an advanced mode, and a pro mode. I would recommend either the basic or advanced. That's really all you need. But what you can do is basically track the buy box new third-party price. You can track the Amazon new price, the third-party new price, or the used price. And generally, I'd only recommend that you track the used price as the one that's really important. I specifically like looking at the advanced tab because it allows you to also include shipping. So for this particular book, if it ever gets to $10 with shipping included, so that means I'm buying the book for $10 or less with all in, then I click this use button and I'm willing to track it in any condition. If you're someone who says, I only want to look for books that are in good condition or better, feel free to do that. But just know that a lot of people sell books as acceptable, but they under promise and over deliver, and you buy the book in acceptable condition from a person with a really high feedback rating, and you get it and it's actually in good condition. So that's why I personally include acceptable condition. And then you can track this for however long you want. I obviously wouldn't recommend tracking it for like only a month or 3 months or 6 months. You should probably track it for at least a year or a couple years. Personally, I like tracking it for 10 years. And so you just say tracking. Now, you'll see that you'll get this once you reach 5,000 trackings. Keepa is actually going to throttle you or prevent you, basically cap you at 5,000 listings. And so there's definitely some things, creative things you can do, like getting a second Keepa account or a third Keepa account or a fourth Keepa account if you want to do that. Or there's even more advanced strategies like using a Keepa data viewer in order to track more books if you were able to make your own spreadsheet. That's more advanced stuff. But this is a way that you could track books. And again, all you need is to have your email so that you can get notification that way. Or if you want to, basically connect your phone to Telegram, you can get like an actual message pop up. Like you can actually see on my phone, it says, hey, you just had this Keepa notification right there. So you can do that as well. So what you need to know then is when you do have books that hit your tracker, you'll get notified via email or text, but also there's a way for you to find them. And all you do is come to keepa.com, come to the bell icon where it says track, and then you can go to tracking overview. And essentially you can look at all of your ASINs that you're tracking. And again, I'm tracking up to 5,000 ASINs right now. And so you'll see it says 5,001. these are all the ASINs that I'm tracking. You have the option to sort them, to filter them. You have the setting. You even have the option to actually download them all if you want, which is really cool. Like if you're using spreadsheets of any form. And then also what you could do within the bell icon track is you could look at your recent notifications. So we can see, well, which books just recently popped up on my notifications. Is this a book that, hit my desired target price? That is a book I might want to buy now. And so it just offers a really cool way for you to track books that are books you might want to pick up again in the future. And of course, these are books that, just because you track a book and it's your desired price doesn't mean that you're going to buy it, because obviously, there's a lot of factors that influence the price of books. And so if the book hits your desired tracking price and you go to it, doesn't necessarily mean you should buy it. You should do the research again and make sure, hey, this is a book that you still want to buy it, and so on. But basically, that's the Keepa track product feature. And we would recommend definitely at the beginning, using it to develop a leads list. If there's any sort of book you want to get notified when it, gets really low, that's a great example. Like, I'll give you a great example. For example, you can tell I'm getting tired, right? For example. So, Signing Naturally, Units 1 through 6 is a book about American Sign Language that does incredibly well every single year. And actually, we'll look at this in Keepa just because it's a little bit easier when we look at the Keepa graph there. So talk about a book that has seasonality. Look at this book. This book is insane. So you can actually see, if we just look at the sales rank first and get rid of everything else, that, hey, the sales rank of this book gets incredibly low during a couple times throughout the year. And that would be here January and February, and obviously August, September, and also a little bit here in June. And one thing that's also really cool about this is you can see the used offer count down below. Keep that right there. Actually, I'm going to scroll down a little bit more and I'll delete that. Okay, so let's go with the sales rank there, sales rank there, and sales rank there. You can see how the used offer count goes down incredibly low there and incredibly low there as well. And so what would you expect to happen with the price? Well, if we go and put the used price up there, you can see how the used price just shoots right up. So we come back and look at the used price. It was here, and then it goes up, and then it comes back down, and the used price goes up, and it comes back down. So my point with the Keepa track product feature is you might want to know, hey, when does the used price get here so I can buy it? And so you'd get notified whenever that price happens. In this case, maybe $15 is what you're tracking it for. And so you would, come up here, track the product, and you can see I'm tracking it for $16 all in shipping or less. So that's what I'm tracking it at. Now you might see these vertical black lines. Essentially, that's every time your tracker has been triggered, is Keepa recording when it sent you a notification. So that's what those vertical lines there mean. And I mean, this is a book that's pretty crazy, right? It's a very, very reliable book. You can buy in the off season, make quite a bit of money on just this one particular book. So that's really helpful there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in this Keepa tutorial that you really need. I think for the most part, we've done a pretty good job of being able to understand what does a book sell for. And the only way that you're going to get better is by practicing. You're going to make mistakes. That's the best way to learn. The best way to learn is to actually do it, make the mistake yourself. Obviously, with my help and Victor's help, you guys are in much better hands than I'm just gonna say you guys are in good hands, right? We're both educators at heart. We want you to be successful. Victor and I have been wildly successful at flipping books, and it's because we've made plenty of mistakes. More importantly, though, we learned from the mistakes. We didn't repeat them again. But then we also learned what patterns worked. Well, what did we do that actually worked, so we could repeat that over and over again. And our goal is just to help you all become, booksellers. So last thing that I'll say is that make sure you check out the BookMine Academy if you haven't gone through it. It's basically 25 video series that Victor and I did on how to become a bookseller, how to understand Keepa graphs, how to understand whether or not a book is undervalued, whether or not it's a good deal, all that stuff. Remember that you guys can try out BookMine out for free for 10 days. It's an amazing software. And yeah, I'm just really excited for people to use it and make money on it. So hopefully that was a pretty good A through Z tutorial. Again, there's more advanced stuff that I didn't go into. It's just because this video is already like an hour and I think a half long, which is pretty crazy. Unedited, and we were flowing. We were really going long. So again, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. Make sure you share it with somebody else. Help them out. But other than that, let us know in the comments what you would like to see next, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Goodbye.